Good morning, everyone. My name is Naris Fleming. I'm the coordinator for specialized engagement programs here at Montclair State University. Thank you so much for joining us for this virtual council workshop. We are joined today with Vanessa Devricks and Megan Hearns. Vanessa is our lead counselor in the admissions office, and Megan Hearns represents the Disability Resource Center. I saw that a lot of you guys were interested in learning more about our Disability Resource Center. So I think this is going to be a very eventful webinar that a lot of people are going to find engaging and with a lot of resources and knowledge base. So if you have any questions, please save it towards the end of each presenter's presentation. Vanessa, if you want to start us off.
Sure. Thank you so much, Naris. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. So my name again is Vanessa Devricks. I'm a lead admissions counselor for Montclair State University's undergraduate admissions. And we're going to talk to you a little bit more today about Montclair State University. So we're going to talk about our academic program, some of our new features for Montclair, as well as how your students can apply to the university. And then again, any questions you might have at the end of the presentation, we'll allow for some time before we start for Megan's side for the Disability Resource Center. So for those that are not familiar with Montclair State University, we are the second largest school in New Jersey. We have 21,000 students on our campus, 17,000 undergraduates. And for Montclair State University, even though we are a larger size institution, we do keep our class sizes around 25 students, which is a 17-to-1 faculty ratio. And for Montclair State University, we are located very northern New Jersey, just on that border for New York City. We're 12 miles away from New York City. So our campus is very accessible for those that are either living or commuting to the school. We have 2 train stations on either end of our campus, as well as the New Jersey Transit train station and the public bus service. So Montclair State University being highly accessible, highly diverse. We also have over 300 different academic programs, which we'll get into. And for our diverse campus, we have around 5,300 to 5,500 students that end up living in one of our 10 different residence halls. So Montclair State University, again, is a larger institution, but we do try to keep our sizes smaller, and students will be able to have access to professors. For Montclair State University, again, diversity is something that we celebrate. It's not just the amount of students that we have on our campus, but we do with our students while we're here. We are considered a Hispanic serving institution, and we've been a top 100 college for Hispanics in the last 18 years by Hispanic Outlook. We're also one of the top 25 LGBTQ friendly campuses, and we've been on the Campus Pride Index for the last few years. In addition to some of our diverse initiatives, we also are very well known within our College of the Arts, our teacher education programs, and our business school. So these are some of the accolades we'd like to push on our students, but also you would also see our, all of our accolades on our webpage, montclair.edu admissions, and about us. So let's get into some of our programs. I'm not going to list all 300 of our majors, minors, and concentrations, but we do have some of our top most popular majors that our students apply for. So in the right-hand corner, our top 5 majors that our students apply for at Montclair State University are going to be within our business administration program, biology, psychology, computer science, and film and television. So again, these are the most popular that our students apply for, but we do have some unique and very competitive programs at Montclair State University, most notably within our musical theater program and our nursing program. So these are probably the most competitive programs on our campus, and we have some unique programs to Montclair State as well as product design. Product design, students will actually be making products for consumerism. This has a 100% job placement rate. Our marine biology and coastal sciences attracts a lot of our out-of-state students, as well as those that are interested in research or fieldwork, and our other performing arts programs, and of course, our teacher education. And some of our most popular programs that are up and coming are within our accounting programs, our exercise science, our family science, as well as our jurisprudence, law, and society. And Montclair State is also the home of over 80 combined degree programs. So for those that are interested in applying to Montclair State or your future students, we have a couple of different options available. So when students apply to Montclair State University, they might have an option for an accelerated degree program. So on their application, they're actually going to see a program such as accounting, and right next to it, they'll see accounting BS to MS. Anything in our yearbook or view book or on our custom view book online will tell you if it is a combined program. So what is a combined degree program? For Montclair State University, combined degree means that in 5 years, students can receive their bachelor's and their master's. So this will save them time and this will save them money, as we are going to be able to count some of our tuition as at the undergraduate rate when they're in graduate school. And they're going to be able to save around $7,000 in tuition by pursuing this combined degree. So this is a great option for students that want to be more competitive in their job field, or again, save that time, save that money, and go through the program for both undergrad and grad school at the same time, and then go ahead and look for their job or in their career. Some of the benefits as well with the combined degree, it's also that they get to apply to the graduate school for free. They do not need that extra application fee, and they also do not need to take the GRE or GMAT scores. So again, this is a great program for some of our students. We have 80 different programs. Again, it's clearly indicated on our review books. And for those that are also looking to do an applied program, we do have a 4+1 Master's in Business Administration. So currently we do have these with about 14 different programs, and we are adding them every single year. So students can do this with a traditional business to a Master's in Business, or for those in humanities or science programs. And a student will also be able to know if their program is compatible for a Master's in Business Administration, because on their application, it'll ask them if they're interested in the program that's eligible for this Master's in Business Administration. And for those of your students that are not sure what they'd like to do yet for Montclair State University, we have a wonderful discovery program for pre-majors. So all of our students that are pre-majors are undecided. They're not sure yet what they like to do, but our discovery program will help them based on their interest. So if a student is interested in, say, business, but they're not really sure what they'd like to go into, they could choose our management, industry, technology track, or education, service and society, health, wellness and medicine, arts, culture, and design. So these tracks are to help students be paired up with their interest. They're going to have a guided experience with their advisor to learn more about their interest, have different major exploration fairs to learn what kind of majors come from these interests, and then what kind of careers come from these majors. Students do not need to declare a major until their junior year. So this guided experience is going to allow them to discover themselves based on these interests, take classes that still count for graduation and be able to explore those programs. And they're also going to have those special sessions and workshops throughout their time in the discovery program. Students can also switch their cohorts. So in their application, they can indicate that they're undecided and like to go to one of the discovery programs, or if they're already in a discovery program in one of these tracks and wants to switch the track, they can do so. So this is a fantastic program that we have. It's extremely popular for students. About 1/3 of our students, incoming freshmen, do go into our discovery program. And again, it is a very guided experience to help students choose their major and have more confidence in what they like to select. And for our students on our campus, again, Montclair State University being such a big campus, we do have over 120 clubs and organizations that students can choose from. This ranges from the academic clubs and organizations, religious and spiritual clubs and organizations, cultural clubs and organizations, and also hobby-related clubs and organizations. And what's great about Montclair State University is that if we do not have that club or organization on campus, our students can also create their own club or organization. A lot of our clubs and organizations are run by student leaders on campus, so they are able to be in control of some of the clubs and organization activities and promote their club and activities on our engaged network within Montclair State. In addition, we do have 34 fraternities and sororities on our campus. They're from different multiculturals, local sororities, national sororities and fraternities, as well as service-based fraternities and sororities on our campus. We have intramural and club sports, Division III athletics, and we do study abroad in 60 different countries. And for study abroad opportunities for your students, they'd be able to do more of that cultural experience for a semester abroad or faculty-led research projects. So for study abroad, there is our own website. So that way students can actually look to see, do I want to do a study abroad program related to my major, or am I more interested into a country I'd like to go to? We do help all of our students with the study abroad options and to make sure that they're focused on their academics and also help them with their tuition financial aid assistance. And for those that are staying on our campus, we do have 10 different residence halls where students can select, and we do guarantee freshman housing by National College deadline of May 1st. and our 10 different residence halls. The options are very different for those that are going to be freshmen all the way up into your senior year. So we do have what's called considered a freshman circle, where we have 3 different residence halls. They're going to be very popular for the Heights, Bowen, and Blanton Hall. And then our other end of campus, we do have more of our College of the Arts circle for Freeman and Russ. And as you get older, the experiences change to be more condo and apartment-like. So the other side of campus do hold 3 more different residence halls. So again, there's many different options for students, and it's really nice because you're going to be able to select housing based on your interest of capacity, the different amenities, and also different living and learning communities that are associated with some of our residence halls. Okay. And Montclair State is a little bit newer to our Common App. So for your students that are applying, they can apply either directly through our website or on Common App. It does not matter how your students apply to Montclair State University. They can select either or. Once they do choose to submit their application, they'll always get an email from us that says, thank you for submitting your application, and here's your next steps. And they'll be able to upload their materials directly into their application portal. And for students that are completing their application, besides their $65 application fee or fee waiver that you as a school counselor might be able to provide, or the NACNAC or College Board waiver, they would also need either an essay and their official high school transcript and letter of recommendation. And the letter of recommendation will be from their school counselor. For those that are into the College of the Arts, you will also need an additional portfolio and audition in order to be reviewed for that major specifically. And how are decisions made at Montclair State University? So once your student applies to Montclair State, they're going to see in their application portal any red X's for what is missing. All green check marks will mean that they are ready for review. When us as admission counselors review your students for their decision, we are considered holistic reviewers. So we're going to be looking at all the application material in order to make a decision if they're accepted to university and for their major. So the main factor will be on their academic transcript. We're going to be looking to see how well your student has been doing year over year, as well as their cumulative GPA. Our GPA, typically around a 3.0 or a B, average 85, is considered a well-prepared student, and about our average income in class has around a 3.3 GPA. In addition, we've been test optional since 2014. So this is something where students can choose if they'd like to submit their test scores for consideration. It can never hurt the student in the application process, but can only help them in the admissions process. And this would be considered any academic material for standardized test scores if they choose to submit. And for our freshman standards, we are expected they are completing their curriculum in order to graduate from high school. And their units are going to be with 4 years of English, 3 units of mathematics, including Algebra 2, 2 units of the same foreign language, laboratory sciences, and social sciences. And they could also choose their elective subjects in any of the areas above. So this will be a factor in how we're deciding our students for admission to Montclair State. Then, as I mentioned, students can be admitted undeclared, pending any audition or portfolio votes for those that are, again, in the College of the Arts, or for those that are being reviewed for a nursing program. So being holistic reviewers, again, we are taking all factors into consideration, with the main factor being their academic transcript. And students are always encouraged to apply as early as possible to Montclair State University, with our early action deadline coming up on December 1st. So for Montclair State University, early action deadline is non-binding, but if students are complete by December 1st, they will receive a decision by December 23rd from our university. And for those that are interested in a nursing program, we do encourage you to also apply by this early deadline to receive your notification by January 10th. If any of your students are interested in applying by nursing, please note that the last application deadline will be January 15th. After this date, the nursing program will be taking off the application. So you want to make sure that any students that are interested in nursing program, they're complete by January 15th. Those students that are complete by January 15th will receive notification by or before April 1st. And finally, we are rolling admission schools, so we go all the way up until March 1st as our preferred deadline. And if you're complete by March 1st, on a rolling basis, we'll decide your application, usually about 2 to 4 weeks after you're complete. So for those that are receiving a notification, you're also going to receive notification if you've been admitted to the university and to your major. And for Montclair State University, we are one of the most affordable in the state of New Jersey. And for our tuition fees, we have listed for our in-state students if you're commuting, and our average room and board. About 71% of our students do receive or some sort of financial aid, either through submitting their FAFSA for need-based aid or through one of our merit-based scholarships. We'll look at students as reviewed. So for our scholarships at Montclair State University, we are looking at students as they apply to Montclair with their admissions decision. This will be merit-based scholarships, and they will be considered based on their academic achievement in high school. So for students that are applying to Montclair State University, there's no separate application needed in order to be reviewed for a scholarship. This will be automatic when they're being reviewed for a decision. Again, we do encourage our students to apply as early as possible for full scholarship consideration, but we do go all the way up until March 1st. When a student is notified of their decision, they'll also be notified in the same letter if they're eligible for a merit-based scholarship. It'll let them know the amount and that it's renewable for 4 years. So again, students will be notified at the same time of the decision if they're eligible for a merit-based scholarship. In addition, for New Jersey residents, we also have the Garden State Guarantee Program. So this is a newer program within the state of New Jersey, but Montclair State University also has a portion for students. So the Garden State Guarantee Program is a financial aid program that will provide up to 4 semesters of free tuition for 4-year New Jersey public institutions of higher education. So the eligibility criteria, besides being a New Jersey resident, will also be an adjusted gross income. For Montclair State University, we also take it a step further. For students around the $65,000 to $80,000, we will lower their tuition to no more than $7,500 for full-time enrollment for those pursuing their bachelor's degrees and earn no more than 126 credits. Again, this will apply later in their 3rd or 4th year at Montclair State University. So if you think a student might be eligible for that, you could also encourage them to submit their FAFSA for consideration, and they'll also be asked for any additional documentation or from NJHESA. And Montclair State University will also notify students if they need more information or if they're eligible. And for Montclair State University, we're always looking to visit your school, whether it's in person or virtually. So if we have not yet visited your high school, you can also ask me if we were preparing any visits on this calendar year. We are currently visiting through December, and we will also be visiting if you have a college fair in the spring. So again, if we have not yet visited your high school, but you would like us to visit either in person or virtually, you could send me an email at devrexv@montclair.edu. And for those school counselors, if you have not checked it out already, we do have resources available for you through this link. In addition to different webinars throughout the year, you will also have updates on admissions, quick facts about how students are applying or admitted to Montclair State University, as well as new events throughout the entire year. And if your students do have any other questions, besides getting in touch with the admission counselors through their email, which will be available in our student portal, they could also sign up for one of our telecounseling appointments right online at our website. In addition, your students will also be able to get to know Montclair State University through our on-campus events. We are hosting our open house on November 13th. It'll be a Sunday. This will be a great benefit for juniors or seniors especially because they'll be able to do academic sessions in addition to campus tours and residence life tours for Montclair State. And then finally, in my contact information will be for me specifically, devrexv@montclair.edu, as well as our general office of undergraduate admissions is msu@adm@montclair.edu. And please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanessa. Does anyone have any questions? You can come off mic. I think many of you have the latest version of Zoom, so you should be able to turn on your microphones and ask your question directly. You can also raise your hand or submit your question in the chat. I thought I heard someone. Once again, does anyone have any questions for Vanessa? Okay, great. Well, Vanessa, that was very informative. Thank you so much. If at any point you have any questions for Vanessa, you can get in contact with her directly. This whole webinar is recorded. So if you want to get a copy later on, you can always email me and to see all this information. So at this time, I'm going to allow like a 1 or 2 minute break while we transition presenters, and stay tuned.
Good. It's still morning, so good morning, everyone. My name is Megan Hearns. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am the director of the Disability Resource Center, or DRC, here at Montclair State University. So nice to talk to everyone today. A little disclaimer, I have to apologize. I'm working from home today. My little one, I'm on mom duty. My little one is very sick, so you may hear some coughing and all that in the background. That is him, as you just heard. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about connecting your students with the DRC here at Montclair, or just in general in post-secondary higher education. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about some of the differences in receiving services in high school and post-secondary or higher education, the differences in the process, in the documentation, and in the accommodations themselves as well. I'm also going to provide you some tips on how to prepare your students for life after high school, getting those evaluations, talking to them about when to talk about and when to provide that documentation to the university, hopefully Montclair State, that they select. And then we're going to give you a little bit of insight on what we do at the DRC and what we offer at Montclair State. So when we talk about types of disabilities, we're commonly, a lot of people think of disability as something that's visible. So they think of an individual who may be visually challenged or blind, or an individual who may be deaf or hard of hearing, or even someone with a mobility or a physical disability, like a wheelchair. But at Montclair State, and predominantly in higher ed itself, the majority of documentation and conditions that we receive for accommodations are invisible disabilities. So those things that you can't look at a student and see, oh, that's your challenge. About 5 years ago, the majority of the documentation and the presenting challenges that our students were coming to receive accommodations involved learning related challenges. So things like ADD, ADHD, specific learning disabilities. In the last 5 years, and specifically since COVID, that ratio has actually changed significantly. And it's a little bit more of an equal, somewhat unbalanced distribution, in that now learning disabilities, ADHD, specific learning disabilities, are now our second, our most commonly requested accommodation or diagnostic type will be mental health. So students with anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, those are our most commonly requested, the most common conditions that are resulting in accommodations at Montclair State. And we're seeing that in higher ed in general. But we also work with students who have brain injuries, things like concussions, different types of developmental challenges, chronic medical conditions, seizure-related disorders, cancer, diabetes. Of course, long-term COVID impact has also started to peek its head at Montclair. Autism and autism spectrum challenges, and our speech and language. So communication, definitely executive functioning challenges, with many of these conditions listed here. So the differences in disability services, the first main difference are going to be the legal statutes that govern high school or K through 12, and then post-secondary. So in K through 12, the dominant legal statute is going to be IDEA. In post-secondary, it's going to be ADA in section 504. And basically the biggest difference between the two, it's all about providing access, connections, accommodations to students. But there's two words that are most commonly associated with post-secondary, and that's reasonable and appropriate. It's based on ensuring that there's not a fundamental alteration of the curriculum or the objective of the course, the program, or the college. And that's where a lot of the challenges and changes in accommodations occurs in college. The types of documentation is also going to differ, and the way that a student self-identifies and then conducts and completes the intake process. All of that is extremely, extremely different and can often cause a lot of challenges for our students. So in that process, in high school, the school at some point, in many cases, you may have a student who's coming to you who's already had an IEP or 504 in their prior school. So in middle school and elementary school, and it follows the student. In college, yes, we do have students who have had experiences with IEPs and 504s in high school, but we also have students who are newly diagnosed, either in undergraduate or even in their graduate program, with a variety of challenges. And it can be a learning challenge that, for a lot of different reasons, perhaps the family was not supportive of accommodations in high school, or perhaps the student just never utilized them or just was unaware. Or maybe they have a new diagnosis and there's some new challenges that have developed in college. So in high school, the school district or the school itself identifies and evaluates that disability. So in college, the student has to come to us. They either come to us with their documentation, or we can refer a student to be evaluated. If we are referring a student to be evaluated, they are responsible for covering the cost of that evaluation. And unfortunately, insurance does not cover these evaluations, and they're quite expensive. They can be several hundred to several thousands of dollars. The communication between the student and parent and school, that is an integral process and part of the process in K through 12, is that this parent is absolutely involved. They're minors, so they have to be. And the parents also communicate and are communicated with frequently with the school. And often we find that students, when they get to college, they don't know their accommodations or the reason they received accommodations. In college, we are prohibited from communicating with parents. There are some proxy, designations for one-time situation regarding grades or financial aid and things of that nature. But when it related to disability services, it's a very, very different process. Parents are welcome to reach out to us and let us know of a challenge or a concern that they have with their student. But if that student does not request or reach out to us, our hands are very, very tied, unless it's an urgent or emergent situation. You know, if a student is unable to communicate with us, they're in the hospital, they are being hospitalized, things of that nature, then yes, we absolutely will communicate with the parent on behalf of the student, but the student is always included in those communications. But if it's a concern of my son or daughter, I'm not sure if they're doing well in classes, they're struggling in their classes, that's definitely something that the student is going to have to communicate with us. Could you move? The school develops and monitors that IEP or that educational plan. They also monitor the student. So there's those frequent scheduled check-ins. So you have your review with your students and with the teachers often as well. That's to see how the student is progressing in their classes. If there's additional accommodation needs, if there are additional flexibilities and assistance that can be made with that with and for that student. And again, in college, the student receives accommodations that they are eligible or qualified to receive. Services are open to all of our students, whether they're registered with DRC or not. DRC services are specific to our students, but things like tutoring, a lot of the peer resources on campus, counseling, those are all open to all of our students. But in terms of tracking and monitoring, there's different processes and different scheduled times and intervals in which that happens, but it's not entirely through the disability office. More likely it is from the professor who may put a progress note, but that doesn't necessarily entail their accommodations or their reason why they're registered with our office, which is also another difference I'll get into later. Also in high school, the student is labeled as special education. They may be in certain classes, the pull-out classes. There's on their IEP, it also lists a category of their specific diagnosis. In some cases, the diagnosis itself. I've seen things that say other health impaired, autism, emotional disturbance. There's a variety of different types of categories that may apply to a student. In college, there's no public notification, there's no labels or indication on their academic records. So their transcripts, their internal processes and learning management platforms do not have any information regarding their affiliation or registration with the office. In terms of accommodations, so those were the differences in the process to register or to affiliate yourself with the disability office at a specific college. That process is consistent across higher ed. So whether a student is interested in coming to Montclair State University or the University of Southern California, the process is very much the same. Accommodations and the documentation and all of that, that will vary. There's not a universality in terms of all post-secondary institutions require the same documentation. So some schools will accept an IEP or 504 alone, where other schools may require specific evaluations, documentations, and may have additional criteria for each of those documentation. In terms of the accommodations themselves, each school provides typically the same types of accommodations. The variety may change. So say, for example, you have a student who uses assistive technology. One school may not provide a read speaker. One school may not provide Kurzweil, but they have other types of programs or, platforms and technology that they would provide to a student that provides the same service as those specific companies and products. General differences in accommodations. In high school, the school will provide any and every service to assist a student in their class, so that classroom learning, in their testing, and in school-sponsored activities. That does change slightly at the collegiate level, that the accommodations that are provided are, again, reasonable and appropriate, so that those accommodations do not alter the fundamental alteration of the course objectives for that class, that program, that degree. There are different standards of for each association and industry within a variety of colleges or programs that govern the academic curriculum and what is consistent and what is required for that degree program. And the accommodations are aimed to be a bridge to assist the student while they're completing those activities, those tasks. It also gets a little little tricky when we talk about school-sponsored activities. Accessibility is not just the disability office's responsibility. It is a campus-wide commitment to improve and provide access to all who visit that campus. So it's not just academic, it is the campus itself. So it's residential, it's their co-curricular activities, it's socialization, it's dining, parking, it's a variety of those things. And those accommodations can be applicable in those activities. Of course, documentation supported. The school, in high school, the school must provide individualized tutoring. In college, that is available to all students. It is not an accommodation. Again, some schools have tutoring offered through the disability office, in addition to any tutoring options that will be available university-wide. Tutoring may also be part of an academic sanction or an academic requirement, or even part of a financial aid requirement. So if a student has to maintain a specific GPA to remain eligible to play sports, to maintain a scholarship, tutoring may be required if that GPA, falls a little short of that requirement. But as an accommodation, it's not an accommodation in college. In terms of time, and this is what another significant challenge in that transition to college for our students. In terms of time, that executive functioning, that time is structured in high school between parents, guardians, and the school. So you have your class, school is open from this time to this time. After your classes, you go home or go to whatever activities you have in your personal life that's been structured or prompted through your family. In college, the student manages their own time. Students create their schedule. Your first semester at Montclair, the department advisors complete the student schedules, but each semester after that, the student selects their own schedule. So they're responsible to manage their time and register for courses that are aligned with their degree program and their interests. And even in some cases, in a way that aligns with their needs related to their access challenge. So say, for example, we have a student who may struggle with insomnia, and having an 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning class is not something that's going to be beneficial for them in terms of their academic success. So they would receive an accommodation, which would allow them to register on the first day of registration, register early, to increase the chances and likelihood that they can create a schedule that does not have an 8 or 9 o'clock class. So if they find that, they have 1, 12, 1, 2 o'clock classes, that's their optimal time, then it will increase the likelihood of them being able to create that schedule for themselves. In high school, the special education teacher or the guidance counselor, and oftentimes that would be you, is the liaison between the student, the parents, the teachers, the subject teachers, to discuss those accommodations, to get that feedback from the teacher, to then develop and reassess accommodations. And in some cases, to even determine that there is an access challenge, that a student needs to be assessed and evaluated for accommodations. In college, the student self-advocates. I definitely look at our faculty as our first responders. So often they will recognize or even see that change in a student and will refer or talk to a student about a variety of services and resources on campus. And that helps to connect the student to the resource that is helpful to them. But that doesn't always happen, and that's not the requirement of faculty. If a student needs some assistance, if a student is at risk or has questions or concerns or challenges in college, that student has to reach out. And again, many times because of programs and webinars like this, the Disability Services Office at any college or university tends to educate faculty on those referrals. So they know how to recognize and then refer a student to that office for some assistance without determining what that challenge, what that assistance would be. So in terms of some tips to help prepare students to transition to college, whether it's a 2-year, a 4-year, a college or a university, in-state, out-of-state, online or in person, what is, to me, what is most important is when that student identifies with that office. It's very common, and I get a chance to meet a lot of our prospective students during our open house and different activities that our university admissions department has for prospective students and their families. And the DRC is included in those programs. And every year, we usually have a line out of the door trying to talk to families. And our portion is only about 2 hours, but we usually go about a good 3, sometimes 4 hours with parents, because we want to make sure we're answering questions and we don't turn anybody away. But the most important is going to be once that student has determined and is accepted and has determined that they want to come to Montclair State University. Okay, no problem. Once they've determined that they want to come to Montclair State University, that's when, and they've been accepted, they've deposited, that's when they want to send their documentation to the DRC or the disability office at that school. That's when we can see that the student is committed and coming to the university. And it should be sent to that disability office only. Documentation sent to admissions or to an advisor or to the first year connections or the orientation department at a university does not get forwarded to the Disability Resource Center or the disability office. That best time is once they are accepted, have confirmed and deposited that they're coming to that school. Again, each school does their registration process differently. We'll get into the DRC at Montclair State, our process, but some schools want that documentation emailed, faxed, dropped off. Some schools have an online portal. It just depends and will vary with that school. So it could be helpful if when you're meeting with students and they're talking about the different schools that they have applied to, that they're interested in, that they've been accepted to, looking at their disability office's website to determine that registration process. Some schools may also have a specific program. I believe I don't remember what school, but some schools have a specific program related to a specific type of diagnosis. So there may be a LD or learning disability or ADHD, ADD related program, which has a separate admissions process. There may be a program for students on the spectrum. There may be a program for students in recovery. There's a lot of different types of specific programs that provide a specific type of support for that type of student that you would want to maybe talk to your students about or even look at their websites. You do want to make sure that that student has been reevaluated before sometime their junior or senior year. With COVID, that was extremely difficult, and we get it, we totally understand, and are working with students that have had some documentation that's not always as current as we're accustomed to. For us, that's not a barrier. We will still accommodate a student with, as long as we see something, that there is a history. But they want to have a recent evaluation, and that's going to help them after undergraduate. For if they want to go into a graduate program, there's often graduate admissions testing, and the testing, it varies with the requirements, but it will ask for documentation up to the last 4, 5, 6 years. If the student was tested in junior or senior year, that documentation is still most likely current when they're getting ready to take those entrance exams for graduate school. You want to talk about self-advocacy and start modeling that with your students. Of course, they're high school students, so there's not as much self-advocacy required in high school as in college. But it's very helpful to have them at least be familiar with their diagnoses and their accommodations. It helps with the conversation once they come to college, so they're aware of their challenges, they're aware of what helped them, and we can take it from there. Because often there are additional accommodations that may or may not be as supported as necessary that we're getting from the student. In terms of how specifically that autism spectrum or that learning disability impacts them in their classes. You also want to encourage students to familiarize themselves with the services at each college or university and take a tour of that university. That helps with a lot of that anxiety and concern of navigating a larger or a smaller school. It also helps with them connecting to make friends and get to know people before they start college in September. That is one of the most common questions or concerns that students have when I meet with them who are incoming students. They're super excited to come to college, but they're super nervous about meeting people or being the only student in their class. They're also coming to us with trauma, what I call IEP accommodations trauma, because they are very much accustomed to being removed from class, from other people, teachers, the school in general, knowing, hey, I'm the student with a learning disability, or I'm the student with anxiety. It's commonly known because of the connections and the collaborations through the guidance counselors, the teachers, the parents, the staff, and faculty in general. So when they get to college, they assume that the same is going to happen here. So familiarizing them with some of these differences and that expectation of what happens in general in college definitely helps students recognize that they need to and should connect with the disability office as soon as possible before they start classes. The sooner we can get them on an accommodation plan and get them connected with their faculty and their accommodations and any other services that are offered with the office, the more successful, the more confident they are in their ability to be successful in college as well. So really quick don'ts. You don't, as I said, you don't want to send documentation with the admissions application or packet. Students do not want to disclose their disability outside of the disability office. Again, it's going to be called different things at different schools, but they don't want to disclose that unless they are for certain that this is the office and department that provides accommodations. They don't want to assume that an IEP or 504 directly translates or follows them in totality in college. There will be, for many students, some differences and even some loss of accommodations in college. It's not a menu, so I can't even say students with ADD get this, students with anxiety get that. It's case by case. We look at the documentation, but we also have that appointment with the student to talk about those challenges. And you don't want students to wait to register with the disability office. There's no timeline or deadline to register. However, accommodations are not retroactive. So the sooner a student registers or self-identifies, the sooner we can have that intake appointment and discuss that accommodation plan in college. So the intake process at Montclair State University, at the DRC, we are a school that uses an entirely online platform for our accommodations. Our platform is called AIM, which stands for Accessible Information Management. So students would go to our website, complete the application in AIM. It just asks some basic demographic questions and the type of challenges that they've experienced in high school and the accommodations that they've received as well. The student also uploads documentation in the system. If they don't have their documentation at the time of the application, AIM sends them an email with a link directly to their application in which they can upload the documentation once they've gotten it. But we need both an application and documentation in the system to move forward in the intake process. So once we have that, both of those things, documentation is reviewed, and one of our staff is assigned as the student's counselor who reaches out to them to schedule an intake appointment. Students can attend that appointment on Zoom or in person. We're actually noticing that a lot of students are selecting the in-person option, which is awesome. So we get to see our students and actually interact with them as we're accustomed to. And during that appointment, that's when we get to know our students. We talk about some of those challenges. We talk about accommodations, but most importantly, we find out what are our students' goals? What are their interests? What prompted them to choose their major, Montclair? And what do they want to accomplish? And a lot of times that does help us connect them with different resources on campus, connect them with student employment, other types of services and things that are available outside of the DRC. So again, we can connect them as soon as possible to be successful in their college experience. We also talk about the accommodations and will assign that accommodation plan, which the students then go into the system to request their accommodation notice. So the IEP and 504s are then replaced with an accommodation notice in which students request, again, because we have an online system, they request that notice each semester using that system. That notice is sent to the professors via email and has their accommodations listed. That notice does not a big difference for students, and they often kind of give me a big smile or like a little wink, or you see a little twinkle in their eye when I tell them that with the accommodation notice, there's no additional documentation, nor is there information regarding the type of disability. So no more categories. It is just Megan Hearns is registered with the DRC and receives the following accommodations. And there's a brief explanation. Again, accommodations are going to be case-by-case basis, but some of the accommodations are, in terms of academic accommodations, are most commonly requested and approved, absolutely additional testing time. We have a testing facility right across the hall from our main office, in which we accommodate additional time. We have adaptive technology, adjustable furniture, magnifiers, computers, nice large clocks so students can maintain and track their own time. And it's got a beautiful view of campus for those stressful moments when they're trying to complete an exam. We also offer a variety of accommodations like attendance, priority registration, note-taking based accommodations, deadline extensions, seating, you name it. We've got a lot of technology, audio books, captioners, interpreters. I could go on and on. We also work with, as I said earlier, Accessibility is a campus-wide initiative. It's not just tasked to the DRC. So we also accommodate students in a variety of their campus activities. So working with our university facilities department, who handles all of the information and the structure on campus. So everything from our cleaning services to elevator maintenance, to even replacing or changing some things in classes, getting some technology situated for students, creating an accessible campus map, accessible master calendars, things of that nature are some of the initiatives that we're doing and have done with our facilities department. Dining services. Our students are able to work with our campus chefs to limit cross-contamination. We have lots of great options on campus in terms of gluten-free, kosher dining, a lot of options, but there's still a chance for cross-contamination. So making sure that students who have that concern with a medical condition or a food sensitivity or allergy are able to experience the variety of campus dining in a safe way. Housing accommodations, including emotional support animals, single rooms, housing modifications as well, are also some of the accommodations that we provide that are non-academic related. I like the formula of accommodations plus advocacy equals access. It's not one or the other, it's both. Access is not a final destination. So you don't start at part A and then you get to the accessible location. Access is a journey, it's a process. And the goal is to continuously narrow the gap between what is accessible and what is not. But no matter what you do, there will always be something that may not be fully accessible to someone. So there's always work to be done, which makes this such an amazing field. And it's kept me interested and intrigued for almost 20 years. It also is, one of the things that has prompted the DRC to recognize that we're more than just accommodations. We do accommodations very, very well, but we also provide support and resources. DRC is a service as well for our students. So they're not just here to take classes. Yes, that is the dominant reason why they're here. They're here to get their education. But they're also 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds who are growing and developing into their adulthood, figuring out who they are and what they want out of life. Bodie, don't touch that, baby. Thank you. So to support them in their academic and personal development, we have a set of initiatives that are tailor-made to address the concerns, the focuses within each academic year. The Red Hawk Fly, or Fellows Leading Inclusive Initiatives, is a set of those initiatives. So for first-year students, the focus is assisting students transition into college. So we have specific programs such as START, which stands for Student Transition and Readiness Training, to assist our students in that development, where we're providing workshops within the first 6 weeks of the semester to help our students with their executive functioning, to get organized, how to self-advocate. We talk about it all the time, but we need to teach our students how to do that, how to have that conversation with your faculty, how to work in groups, how to take notes. It's not something students have really had to do on this level before, but they're expected to be able to do that with some success kind of instantly. So START helps develop that for our students. We also have an orientation specifically for DRC students and their parents. It's two separate ones in which we break down what they need to know. University orientation has lots of information, and students, all very important, but our students have a limit to how much information and how focused they are going to be in any given setting. So our orientation is right before school starts. It's much shorter, and it's definitely impactful in terms of what they need to know right away. We also have our Access Allies, who are our peer mentors. They are juniors and seniors, or 3rd and 4th year students, registered with the DRC. They have office hours and they work with students individually. They attend a lot of these workshops, such as Orientation Start, and allow students an opportunity for one, representation, so that they know that as a first year student, there is success, that they can do this, and here's some tips on how to be successful in college. We also meet students where they are, and we have a social media campaign. We don't expect them to follow us, but we can still put the information out there. We're also involved in a lot of different campus-wide initiatives in terms of accessibility, improving campus climate. We work with our career services department. We have to create an accessible career fair with workshops leading up to it. We have partnerships with a variety of companies who are recruiting and are interested in recruiting students with disabilities specifically for internships and employment. So we talk about financial literacy for our students, you name it. Again, Access and the DRC is more than just accommodations. We are a resource and service for students and our faculty as well. So with that being said, I'd love to take any questions. I'm sure you've heard me talk a lot, and there's lots that you may have on your mind.
Thank you, Megan. And Marla had a question during your presentation. If not, I'll just read it. Accommodation question: students that are approved for copies of notes or a note taker, how is that specifically handled at Montclair? Are note takers available? Can they record lectures? Are pictures allowed? Do students ever receive extended deadlines? As a high school case manager, we tell students no, only extended time on tests. Is that accurate? Are there exceptions to that? And if so, can you give an example?
Sure. So I'll take the note-taking question first, and then I'll take the deadline extensions. So for both of those questions, yes, those are accommodations at Montclair State University. In terms of note-taking, we offer students, eligible students, who have a note-taking, a processing, a reading, a writing challenge. In terms of that accommodation, the base is going to be allowing access to their instructor's lecture notes or their PowerPoint slides. That will allow them to receive, if the professor uses a lecture note, they use slides, they use any type of additional information, they will provide it to the student directly. Some professors will send it through our learning management portal. Some of them will email it to the student directly. Some of them, if they have it on the Google Drive, they'll just share it with the student. The limit of that accommodation, though, is that it does not require the professor to create or use those notes if they do not already. So we do offer 3 alternatives for students. We offer peer note-taking, we offer audio recording of the lectures, and we also have software that we can provide to our students that can help with note-taking. For incoming students, though, we do not recommend peer note-takers, because the peer is going to also be a first-year student in their class. And the goal is to help them receive effective notes. And a first-year student taking notes for another first-year student, there may be some challenges in terms of the efficacy of those notes. So we would provide the student, if they're adamant that they want notes, or if they have someone, a friend, or if they have a relative or someone that they know that's in the class, or that the professor recommends, then yes, we will absolutely do that. Because we recognize that in courses like calculus, chemistry, bio, physics, even economics, hearing how to solve for X, or hearing how to draw, or hearing about a demand or supply curve is not as helpful as seeing it. So we would approve the student to take pictures of the whiteboard or the blackboard in those situations. However, if the course is not specific in that type of instruction, then we will defer the student to audio recording or to the software. And the student can borrow a digital recorder from our office. In some cases, a student may use their laptop or their tablet. We're also seeing an increase in students using the iPad or Chromebooks in terms of their note-taking, so that we will approve an accommodation as well, which allows them to use that computer, laptop, or tablet for their note-taking. In terms of extensions, that is a quite common accommodation. And I actually, unfortunately, it's one of those accommodations that students typically will lose if it's related to executive functioning. So if a student is, typically it is if a student has ADD, ADHD, learning disability, and they've received deadline extensions, typically that is not continued in college because it is regarding their executive functioning. And instead we will refer the student to work with one of our academic coaches to develop their time management, their organizational skills, get them a strategy that really does help them. And it could be everything from apps to daily planners to calendars to notifications. It varies by each student. But with deadline extensions, again, it's going to vary by school, but at Montclair, it is an accommodation that is applicable to everything except exams and quizzes. So additional testing time is a separate accommodation. We do not offer an accommodation for makeup exams or requiring makeup exams. Or to change the date or the deadline for an exam. Some professors may have something online and they say, all right, I open it on Monday, you have until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. That is additional testing time, not eligible for an extension, a deadline extension. So deadline extensions, assignments, projects, papers, homework, discussion posts, things of that nature. The student would reach out to the professor before the deadline or the due date to request the extension. It's not a blanket on all assignments or all homework. The student has to request it, and before the deadline or due date, the professor provides no less than 2 days of an extension. So I hope that answered both of those questions.
Great. Thank you, Megan. We have next a counselor from Union Catholic. Do you want to turn your mic on and ask your question?
Sure. Are any of the coaches or advisors or any of the parts of your program a fee for service?
No. There's no additional fees to register with the DRC or to participate in any of our activities. The only thing that is a fee, it's not a DRC fee, but if a student has to be evaluated or reevaluated, then there is a fee for that. We do have testing on campus. We are one of the universities or colleges who does offer psychoeducational testing and assessments through our clinical services team. So we would refer to them. They also work with students at a significantly reduced rate. We also have connections for students off campus, which are not as expensive, but they're much more expensive than our fees on campus. So if a student needs to be tested, it's $100 and they're tested on campus. And it's the same assessments. It's the Woodcock-Johnson, the Ways, the Wexler, the WIPS, all of those assessments. It's $100. They get the full battery, they receive an evaluation, a full report, and the student provides that to us. If they're referred off campus though, the lowest scale that we have is a provider who will provide those assessments for $800. The highest we have is one who will provide it for $3,600. So you see kind of the fee scale. But no, the coaches are interns, so they are fulfilling their requirement for their program. We do have employment. So if anything, students can get money from us, but no, we do not charge for our services.
Thank you, Megan. Patrick, are you there? You want to ask your question? He might have stepped away. Patrick's question is, how is your process changed if a parent has applied and been granted legal guardianship over their child?
So the process does not change. If this, when we're talking about higher ed, the parent can have, the parent or guardian can be power of attorney and all of those things. However, we're talking about, unless there's a situation in which the student cannot communicate, meaning they may be their development, for example, students with developmental challenges, there may be some challenges with understanding some things. So the student can include a parent or share their emails with a parent, but outside of the intake appointment, and even the intake appointment, there's some limitations in terms of that parent's access to the student. So one thing that we will do is, for our incoming students, we'll meet with the student first. We get to know them, we have conversations, we talk to them about some of their challenges, because they may share things with us that they don't share around that guardian. And then if the student is comfortable, then we'll invite the parent in the meeting a little later when we're talking about the accommodations. That way, the parent or guardian is also aware of the student's accommodations, what they mean, and the process to request those accommodations. That is also why we have our own parent guardian orientation. That orientation is specific for parents and guardians to familiarize them with the DRC and our processes. So how to best support their student. So when that student is struggling, when that student comes to them, which they will, with their challenges, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever that person is, can then connect them and refer them back to campus. So who can really help them? Because when mom, dad, aunt, uncle calls the campus, we do not reach out to the parent. That contact goes to the student and the student only. Now, if that parent guardian has access to their email, or the student shares with them their login credentials, and they see things, that response still needs to come from the student. Even if it's the student's email and the parent is writing the email for the student, which happens all the time, we still see it coming from the student. So we will respond to that student.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Ricky. Ricky, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, just a couple questions.
Sure.
What's the earliest a student can apply for accommodations after they've been accepted to the university?
As soon as they've accepted and deposited, send that documentation over to us. We have a lot of different programs in the summer. So if a student is also a part of one of those programs, we have a program called Summer Bridge, and then we have our EOF summer programs. So if a student is taking classes or is starting before the fall, we definitely recommend that they, complete that application, they self-identify definitely before that program starts. That way we can meet with them, we can discuss their accommodations and create that accommodation plan and implement it for those summer classes or that summer opportunity that they're coming in.
So that's probably like late spring, you would say, right? They should have all their documentation ready to go and sent.
April, May.
April, May, okay. And then I also was curious about what types of accommodations are available for a student with mobility difficulties, like for students that maybe have a one-to-one aide here, in the building currently for mobility difficulties, but not necessarily academic. What are some of the accessibility accommodations that the campus is able to offer?
Sure. So since you mentioned one-on-one aids, if a student has a mobility, a medical, a mental health challenge in which they have someone who works with them, provides them services, and it can be in a residential setting as well. We have the student could also have that, but they have to recruit, hire, pay, all of that. We do not coordinate that for students. So if a student does need an aid, they have to, find that. And we do encourage students to register with DVRS, with DD, and any additional state agency that can help pay for things of that nature and also help recruit an aid. Some students may have a family member or a friend, a trusted family friend, or even an aide that they've worked with throughout, their high school or previously that they want. And they can keep that person, no problem. We just need that information in the DRC. And we'll coordinate things like parking, making sure that the professors are aware that this is not an extra student. So not to engage, not to kind of require them to participate in class or anything, just some of the parameters for that aid. So that's one thing. We also have a PWD, or Persons with Disabilities shuttle. We have a campus shuttle in general that brings students to predetermined stops across campus. But the PWD shuttle is coordinated through the DRC, my department, and parking services. Sorry, we use acronyms a lot, so I have to remind myself not to use the acronym. Right? Sorry about that. So my department and our parking services, shuttle services, coordinates the Persons with Disabilities shuttle, where students call it their personal Uber, the Red Hawk Uber, because they let this shuttle know their schedules, their pickup, drop off location and time, and the shuttle picks them up from that location on that day at that time, and then brings them to their destination point or as close to their destination point as possible. There are some campus buildings that the shuttle is too wide to traverse in those narrow roadways. So we get them as close as possible, which makes a big difference, but it's not as accessible as we aim to be. We are in the process of addressing that. Hopefully by the fall, we'll have some things in place. In addition to that, we also offer, the variety of academic accommodations that student may receive, things like attendance consideration so that the professor is not penalizing them if they're late to class. We would also give them priority registration so they could possibly space their classes out. We can connect them with Access-a-Link through New Jersey Transit. There's a variety of different types of accommodations that a student. We also have an emergency evacuation roster that we share with our university medical response and emergency response team, that in the event of an emergency, the team knows where a student's campus location in terms of their housing or their academics, where they're located, and what their access challenge would be, to make sure that we get them out safely in that emergency.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Awesome, awesome. Does anyone else at this time have any questions for Megan? Okay, seems like all hearts and mind are at peace and we have all our questions answered. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.